let it shine all together now. Let it shine. And I say that not just because of our guest speaker today, but we are literally making it shine today with our new lights. I don't know if anybody noticed. You can actually see the person sitting next to you today. So I would like to especially thank Randy Sitzman and Fred Clausen for making this happen. And they didn't actually climb the scaffolding. Yeah. They didn't actually climb the scaffolding, but they did facilitate and make it happen. And it looks beautiful. One row just to show that technology still does its thing. Yeah, sometimes, yeah. So we get to make up for that one row that is not shining today with our guest speaker, who really needs no introduction. Some of you are still looking at the ceiling going, what? Anyway, Don, you really need no introduction because I see people here today that because of your involvement in the community here and out in the DFW area, you actually met people and said, you should check out Unity of Dallas. And then they said, what? Right? Exactly. But you kept on anyway, kept talking to them, and some of you are here because of that. And also, well, some of you may need an introduction to Don because you may not quite recognize him today. See, he moved to California, and he has a little extra look going on with a little more growth right here, something called Thai fisherman pants, and his beautiful girlfriend, Laurie Forget, French Canadian, is here with us today, so thank you. And did you pick that out for him? No, not somebody else on his own volition. I was just wondering about that. Okay. Don has an interesting background, as many of you know, but you may not know he graduated from West Point. And he served in the military, thank you, and in the artillery, right? Artillery unit. Yeah, artillery unit, you jump out of planes and things like that. And also had a wonderful career in corporate America. He led and ran a oil company in West Texas, and also clean tech, and just an amazing background. And you also, of course, roamed the halls of Unity of Dallas for so long, and we're so grateful for that. So here to talk about how to let it shine through the heart, please welcome Don Drake.
Well, thank you all very much. I can't tell you how excited I am to be back here. I had trouble falling asleep last night, and I woke up this morning before my alarm clock went off because I just couldn't wait to get in here and be back in my spiritual home where so much spiritual growth happened for me, you know, and James having faith in me and asking me to get up on stage and speak, but maybe I thought I would never do that. I found Unity to be a place that really encourages growth and encourages you to get out of your shell, and it's a safe place to expand. So thank you again, James, for having me back, and thank you everyone for having me here. Thank you. I'm also really excited to be here on Martin Luther King weekend, where we commemorate a great man who was very courageous, who worked and moved from his heart, and who helped change a nation. And today we're going to talk about living from the heart. We're going to talk about Dr. King and some of the things that he did. You might remember in my last talk here, I spoke about the yoga of Jesus and how yoga is the science of being still and knowing. And today, in Living Through the Heart, we're going to talk about how the heart is the instrument of knowing. It's the instrument of yoga. It's how we know that we know. But first, let's address the pants in the room. Bruce Pryor, if you're watching this, there are two people you can thank for this outfit. First is Bruce, who, when he spoke here, he's the former CEO of HeartMath, and he spoke on December 30th about the heart as well. And he talked about his journey from California to New York City after 20-something years and the changes he underwent moving from west to east. Then he made some jokes about me moving to California, which included some funny things he did up here. And I'd already been thinking about this, but I wasn't sure. And when he said that, I was like, I am definitely wearing it. So Bruce, if you're watching this, I hope you're watching this, thank you. And then the other person is Pete Asplund, who, Pete and I lived together for a couple of months in the Red House, and one day Pete came out wearing some pants that were real baggy and whatever, and I said, Pete, what are those? And then Pete asked in typical fashion, said, those are Thai fisherman pants. They're awesome. I said, oh, tell me about those. He's like, well, they're comfortable, yada, yada, yada. So you know about my journey to California. I packed what I could get in my car, and went west. Well, I live up north where things are very laid back and very flowy and very rural, and we don't have a lot of use for khaki pants and polo shirts, which I happen to have a lot of. And so, as I was having a wardrobe crisis out there and thinking about what I'm going to wear during my healing work and not wanting to pay Lululemon prices and wear stretchy pants, I remembered Pete, I remembered Thai fisherman pants, and I found them on Amazon, and I'm like, I'm going to try, see how those feel. So I got a pair, and I now own one in every color. I love it. So, I have to admit, my ego feels a little vulnerable up here because James is a pretty snappy dresser, a lot of our speakers are pretty snappy dressers, and my mind thinks, you're speaking at Unity, you should wear a suit. But my heart says, why not? Be you. So here I am. It's an exercise, and it doesn't play anything of living from the heart. There's been plenty of times when the mind says one thing, but your heart says something different. And sometimes it's a discipline to bring ourselves into a zone where we're not super comfortable. But I'm actually really comfortable. These pants are awesome, so I'm glad I'm wearing them. Let's see. So what is living through the heart? Living through the heart is living in a state of surrender. It's living in a place of knowing versus knowledge. It's living in a place of seeming spiritual paradoxes like the fact that there's strength in surrender. There's power in vulnerability. It's living in ways that our mind may say it doesn't make any sense to us, and it's trusting in life. It sometimes teaches us that the greatest use of our free will, which is sometimes willpower is equated with the mind, the greatest use of our free will is to surrender to divine will. Which again seems like a complete paradox. How can there be power in surrendering? And yet there it is. It's loving the ego, not thinking we have to bludgeon it to death like the enemy. When I first started out in meditation, I thought that was the case. I had to stop the mind. I had to stop the ego. The ego was this evil place of desires or things that were not holy. And in fact, the ego is also part of the divine. It's part of who we are. We weren't made flawed. We were made with egos. And so the ego wants to be loved into samadhi, into union with spirit. In that process, we're going to heal core wounds. All of us have been conditioned. A lot of people are here that are recovering whatever religious background alcoholics. And we're here trying to heal some of the conditioning that we have, or conditioning from our parents or from family or from life experiences. And as we open up more to our heart and that love flows from our heart, it has a way of unwinding the ego. And when that ego unwinds, the energy stored with it, the fear stored with it, the emotion stored with it comes up. And it comes up to be felt, not to be avoided. And really, living through the heart is living a life guided by our highest self, a life filled with synchronicities and miracles and things that go beyond the mind. In fact, we get plugged into something that I call cosmic cloud consciousness, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the heart versus the mind. James's first talk when he came to Unity was about the longest journey, right? The 18 inches from the heart to the mind. And it is the longest journey because it's to the heart, rather. It's a difficult journey to make. It's counterintuitive. It goes against our ego and our programming. Muji said, the voice in our head is not the true voice. Find the voice in your heart. We all know this. It feels right. It resonates. But the mind can be powerful. But this journey is about finding the true voice. So the mind is of the intellect. It's about knowledge. It's about programming. Think of your early day computers that didn't have the internet. You had a hard drive inside the computer, and that hard drive knew whatever you put inside of it, whatever programs, whatever information, and that's all you could get out of that hard drive. Contrast that to the heart in a moment. When you're plugged into the heart, it's more like this. How many of you have Netflix or Amazon Music or iTunes? And has anybody Googled anything ever? I mean, we all have, right? Life without Google almost seems like it didn't exist. But one day it did. When we get plugged into Christ consciousness, this higher consciousness, I struggled for a while with what that definition is. What does it mean to expand our consciousness? It sounds big because it's expanded, but what is it? And I do healing work now, and I'm offering sessions this week, and sometimes when I do healing sessions, I get downloads of information. And one day I got a download of information about Christ consciousness and expanded consciousness. And to me, it's like we go from the hard drive in our mind that has whatever facts that have been recorded up there and conditioning and all that, and it runs all of that, to being literally plugged into cosmic consciousness. So that, like what Jesus said, the things I say not of my own, but rather it's the Father telling me what to say and how to say it and when to say it. We all have access to that cosmic cloud. And we can Google anything through the cosmic cloud. We have streaming information. When we're really tuned into the heart, we have that information. Perhaps some of you have experienced that, where you feel like you're saying something and you're not sure where it's coming from, but it's wise and it feels good. That's that cosmic cloud of consciousness. The heart, opening the heart gets us there. Making that journey from the head to the heart gets us to that place. The heart is also the place of knowing. We talked about the mind being a place of knowledge, which is whatever facts we can retain. But the kind of knowing that I'm talking about could be called self-realization. It has a lot of different names. And if I told you that the sun wasn't hot, you wouldn't believe me, because you know the sun is hot. You felt it every time you step into the sun, it's warm. And there's no logical argument I could construct to convince you otherwise. And you don't have to remind yourself of that. You just know the sun is hot. And you don't need an explanation that the sun is hot. That is knowing. That's the kind of knowing that comes from the heart, from being attuned to the heart, from listening to the heart's wisdom, because the heart's wisdom is universal mind. It is spirit. There's also a concept that goes along with this, though, which again sounds counterintuitive. To have access to all knowledge and wisdom, there is something that Richard Rohr calls kenosis, which is what Jesus practiced. It means emptying out. It's a Greek word for to empty out. So again, we're talking about a paradox here of accessing all knowledge by emptying out. But we're going into this with a beginner's mind, without preconceptions, without prejudgments of what should or shouldn't be, into a place of deep inner knowing. But we have to be like children, as Jesus says in the Bible, and children believe without necessarily having to have a rational explanation for something. And that's why they have these great imaginations. So we have to not prejudge. In fact, there was a book of 75 chapters written in the 1200s by an unknown author called The Cloud of Unknowing. People don't realize it, but a lot of Christian traditions have meditation in them. They're just called different things. And so when you hear contemplative prayer, that's code word for meditation. And a Christian mystic is someone who meditates. It's in even our Protestant type religions, and there are Jewish mystics and Islamic mystics, Muslim mystics, etc., etc. But he wrote this book called The Cloud of Unknowing, and he teaches how to meditate. And towards the end of the book, in the 73rd chapter, I think, he introduces the concept of the cloud of unknowing, which is when you've meditated enough that you're really tuned into your heart and you're tuned into spirit, the mind suddenly doesn't know where it is. When you expand your conscience to infinity, it doesn't have a map. There aren't known reference points. The mind is lost, literally lost, because it can't comprehend the vastness of cosmic intelligence. So those are some of the things we encounter when we're living through the heart, and we expand our consciousness. We'll go through a little phase of not mentally understanding, but yet there's a deep knowing inside of our hearts. What are some of the benefits of living through the heart? Well, some of you guys may remember my journey from Texas to California. The first time I went out there in a meditation, I clearly heard, "You came here to die." And it didn't scare me. I knew it didn't mean that I was going to fall off of a cliff, but I knew it meant a spiritual death, a death of that which I knew as familiar. And I was encouraged by the word, what Jesus said, which is, "Those who will lose their life for my sake shall find it, and those who will find their life will lose it." And for me to go to California, I had to have a lot of hard conversations. I had to talk to James. I had to talk to people here that I knew that I was leaving, and it happened pretty quickly. And so I really felt in some ways like I was dying. I left behind so many things that were so familiar to me that I was comfortable, even if I was unhappy, I was comfortable in knowing what the box was and knowing what the map was. But the benefits of going out there have been immense. I'm living my passion, I'm doing healing work, I'm happy, I'm in nature, and I'm sure some of you have had perhaps similar experiences to that. Another benefit is living a guided life, having let go of the agony of making the right or wrong decision, because when we're living in tune with Spirit, Spirit's helping us make those decisions. We're co-creating with the universe, so agonizing whether I did something right or wrong goes out the window. And in fact, we might even realize there is no right or wrong, there just is. You can't screw this up. You might do something differently next time. As James has said before, sin is the word for to miss the mark. It just means try again. Some interesting studies came out, and James last week talked about the concept of meta moments, which is this moment between impulse and reaction, or thought and action. And that ability deepens when you go into the heart through the practice of meditation, through other practices that we teach here at Unity. And speaking of synchronicities and miracles, when I was here, Bruce Pryor speak on the 30th, a couple days before that, we were at Unity Ranch and taking a walk, and Bruce casually mentioned a study where about 30 folks from HeartMath got together and they hooked them up like they do with the EEG and EKG and all these devices to measure brain response and heart response and so forth and so on. And they wanted to see what those responses were to various images. So the participants had a clicker in their hand which they could advance slides, and I don't know how many slides there were in the show, but maybe 30 or 40 slides, that had everything from puppy dogs and flowers to extreme violence, graphic violence, to a lot of other images. And as they clicked a button, an image randomly came up. Nobody knew what was going to come next. And when the eyes saw that, they registered the body's response. And as you can imagine, looking at a baby, your heart has that nice coherent heart rhythm, and looking at a murder scene, very incoherent, shocking, and all of that kind of stuff. You might be saying, well, no kidding. But that wasn't the most interesting result of this study. The most interesting result to me was when they clicked the button, there was a 3-second delay before the next image came up. But as soon as they clicked the button, their heart registered the response for the next image before the eyes saw what it was. So the heart knew what was coming before it came. So that's scientific proof to the fact that the heart is the seat of intuition, that it knows things that the human mind doesn't know. The signal went from the heart to the brain to tell the brain what was coming, and not the other way around. All right, I have a fill in the blank. This is audience participation time. I'm going to say a phrase, and I'm going to ask you to fill in the last words, one word. The peace that passes all
Understanding.
understanding. Thank you. That deep peace that we're talking about, that peace that comes from living this guided life, living through the heart, passes all understanding. So if you want that peace, don't try to understand it. It surpasses all understanding. And again, the mind won't like that because it wants to understand, but the peace that passes all understanding is beyond understanding. Living through the heart gives the universe permission to manifest a life that surpasses what even we could have imagined. The Secret came out many years ago, and it was instrumental in changing my spiritual life, but where I took issue with it is you're trying to pick the things, the items that are going to make you happy. And then the universe is supposed to give you that car, that house, that place, that job, whatever. What I found is when we concentrate on holding a frequency of joy, love, bliss, peace, happiness, then the universe can fill in the details with whatever is going to bring us to that place. And it may not be things. And it does one other thing. It may set us up years in advance of an event actually happening. So I have to say there's one more reason why I'm wearing these pants. In fact, this outfit. This is the outfit that I was wearing the day that I met my girlfriend, Lori. When I wasn't looking. And I had moved from Dallas to California to go to a spiritual retreat in Portland to meet a girl from Austin. When I wasn't looking. The first 2 days of the retreat, a retreat from someone called Matt Hahn, I was 100% focused on what he was saying. I was not looking. The third day I came in to sit down, and we were supposed to sit in a different section every day to switch up the energy. You know how they do that kind of stuff. And I saw Lori, though I didn't know her, but she was sitting where I sat the day before. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to sit over there. I'm supposed to sit like over here somewhere. And I circled the room 3 times, and most of the rows were closed. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to sit back there. I'll be in the same energy. And I sat next to her, and there was a backpack in between us. We hit it off right away. I found out she was a hospice nurse, and we had a great conversation. And I said, whose backpack is that? She's like, well, it's mine. And I said, can it move? And she was like, I could probably move. You know, I have some friends that are here, but it looks like they're sitting somewhere else, so yeah, I'll move it. And we sat together, and for the next 2.5 hours, I was trying to think how I could talk to her without her being weirded out that I was talking to her at her spiritual retreat. And we ended up going to lunch together and laughing, and on the way back, we were laughing so hard, I reached over and grabbed her hand, and the rest is history. But the way I found my way to Matt Kahn was 5, 6, or 7 years ago, long enough that I can't remember. I got a random email that he was going to be in Dallas. I'd never heard of him. And my ego was making fun of him because at the time he wore sweater vests. And he was really jolly looking, and I was like, who is this guy? Not consciously, I didn't want to make fun of him, but those were the thoughts that were bubbling up in my mind. But I also noticed his eyes that had that spirit glow, kind of like Yogananda and a lot of other great spiritual masters, and something inside said, you need to go hear him. And I knew myself well enough at that time and how my ego reacted that I knew I needed to go see him. But I went, and even sitting in the room at the beginning of the talk, my ego was still making fun of him. And he had a lady with him wearing an outfit like this that I was also making fun of, and now I'm wearing it. But by the end of that talk, the entire room of 200 people was absolutely still, and I was a changed person. So then I took several of his online courses, and then I'd always wanted to go to a Portland retreat, but Dallas seemed too far away. Being in California, I got an email right after I got there. They had a retreat, and I said, I have to go. I didn't know why, I just, I'm going. I signed up right there. And then here I am, and here Lori is. So we just don't know how following our heart, even years later, the universe is putting the chess pieces into place to manifest a life beyond what we could dream in our own limited minds. So let's talk about how to live from the heart. How do we do that? Well, we hone our skills for being still and knowing. I watched the service last week from California, as I often do, and I learned that we now have, I think, 7 different meditation groups that meet here, at least 7 groups that meet every week. Unity is prime training grounds for how to live through the heart. And in fact, the word of the year is Unified. The heart is the instrument of unity. It's the instrument of love. What a great place to learn how to live through the heart. We also learn how to become more attuned to our feelings by tuning into the heart repeatedly like exercise. We just say, how am I feeling? How am I doing? Does this feel right? Does it not feel right? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? And in fact, what we talk about here many times, Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss. It works. Ask Spirit for guidance. Say, show me the way. Please show me the way. And I sometimes say, show me the way and give me some signs. It's not that I don't trust you, Spirit, but sometimes I don't trust me. And the me that I don't trust is the ego that still sometimes bubbles up and might try to color what I'm feeling. And you might get signs like repeating numbers, or something on a billboard, or somebody has a random conversation, or somebody you haven't talked to in a long time suddenly reaches out and contacts you. And those I call spirit winks, spirit nudges. Be on the lookout for those too. That's a sign that you're on the right track. And then practice, practice, practice. Practice, consistent practice, leads to proficiency. Proficiency leads to experience. And that experience of success then feeds on itself. When we follow our heart and it works, we think, wow, that worked, I'll do that again. When it works again, that's even strengthened more and more. And it feeds on itself, and it strengthens our ability then to follow the heart. This is a man who followed his heart. Dr. King was a man of great courage and of great conviction. And we use the word courage. Does anybody know where the word courage actually comes from? It comes from the French word cœur, which is heart. So courage is from the heart. See, Dr. King lived from the heart. You can imagine the passion it took to put himself in these types of situations where his mind had to be saying, if it was me, my mind would be saying, you could get hurt, you could get arrested. And yet, time after time after time, there he was. And I wanted to read a little something that came out in the Seattle Times back in 2011. They said, Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic work on behalf of civil rights for all Americans was grounded in deep religious and moral beliefs. Less appreciated and acknowledged is the courage of his convictions. King was only 26 years old when he joined the bus boycott after the arrest of Rosa Parks in Montgomery, Alabama, where he lived. He became the official spokesman for the boycott. Subsequently, King's house was bombed. How many of us knew he was nearly killed when he was stabbed by an assailant in Harlem while on a speaking book tour in 1958? That's the same year Congress passed the first Civil Rights Act. King was arrested numerous times as he led marches and other demonstrations. He lived a great deal of his life in the face of ugly crowds. King's belief and courage prevailed. King's values and beliefs changed society. His faith and commitment put him at the head of the march. His courage gave others strength. I want to talk to you about the importance of commitment. Dr. King had it, a lot of greats had commitment. And there's a spiritual law that follows commitment as well. You know, Jesus said, don't be lukewarm. Let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. Be committed. Lori found a quote for me by William Hutchinson Murray, who was a Scottish mountaineer. He said, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning the acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas of splendid plans. That the moment one commits oneself, then providence moves too. And when that happens, we call that miracles, synchronicity, divine intervention. So not only do we have to feel our heart's feelings and follow that, we've got to commit. I mean, really commit. Challenges along the way. In my last talk, we talked about Arjuna and the Bhagavad Gita. When we start to follow our heart, the mind becomes afraid. It feels the death of ego, the dark night of the soul. There's a lot of different terms for fear that can arise when we fully surrender to our heart's inner guidance, because the ego doesn't want to die any more than we want to die, and it becomes afraid. So back to this concept that we don't want to bludgeon it to death, we want to love it into connection with spirit. Many masters and adepts tell us that. Yet sometimes we still get the 3 a.m. wake-up call, which I talked about last time, which is, you know, you're sound asleep, you've committed to a decision, and somehow at 3 in the morning you wake up and you feel fear. and your mind is racing, and there's all kinds of ideas going on, and thoughts coming out of things that probably aren't going to come true, but at that 3 in the morning time, you start feeling them pretty strongly. And it's dark, and you really can't do much about it. Except you can. We can remember to say something like, deeper trust, deeper surrender, deeper trust, deeper surrender. Using a mantra like that, I found, relaxes me. It reminds me that I'm co-creating the Spirit. Or you can practice something like japa, which is repeating the name of the divine over and over and over again, and somehow that has a calming effect on the body because we remember deep inside that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and not the other way around. And the story of Arjuna is the story of a man who is dedicated to living life through the heart, to becoming united with Spirit. He's got a fight. He's got a charioteer who is Krishna, which is like Jesus Christ, that same Christ consciousness. He can't fight for him, but he can answer any questions. And Arjuna, to fully go into his heart, has to fight the battles. I don't have time to talk a lot more about that, but again, fortunately, we have at Unity a Tuesday night class where Pete leads a discussion group on the Bhagavad Gita. So if you want to delve more into that and the lesson behind that, then I would encourage you to go to this class. Sometimes we go through a period of grieving when we let go of certain things. It could be an idea of who we are. It could be a relationship. It could be a job. It could be a location. It could be all of the above. It could be all kinds of things. Even though we're happy because we're in a new place, still, in my own personal experience, there still can be a grief over the letting go of something else. Doesn't mean we want that thing. It doesn't mean that we want to go back to the old way, but for some reason, there is a feeling of grief that ensues. That doesn't mean that we're broken. When we feel that, it doesn't mean that we're spiritually defective. It just means that we're human and we feel. And that's part of that unwinding of the ego, that processing, that letting go. And sometimes the ego fights so hard, it tries to not only kill the change that's going on within us, but that sometimes spills out into killing another great spiritual master such as Jesus, or a revolutionary changer like Dr. King or like Gandhi. People's egos can sometimes be so strong that they don't even want to hear that from the outside, let alone from the inside. So let's talk about some strategies for overcoming those challenges. We talked about deeper surrender, deeper trust. There's also having good friends with whom you can talk, with whom you can discuss, share your feelings, receive encouragement. Jesus said to go out 2 by 2, so when you get discouraged, you have a brother or sister to lift you up. No, don't go out 1 by 1, go out 2 by 2. If you get cold at night, which metaphysically may mean you're getting cold feet or whatever, you have someone else to warm you, and you're not out there on your own. He says, woe to the person who goes out by himself and falls down, for there's no one to lift him up. You gotta look around. We've got a lot of friends in here, people we can talk to, we have community. This is such a great place to learn to live from the heart. Also, avoid naysayers. When you're living from the heart and your mind's already telling you why something shouldn't work, don't go find other people who will tell you the same thing. Because there are plenty of them out there. And your mind does not need the encouragement to say no, because it's already telling you no. Keep your vibration high. Watch what you consume with your eyes. Watch what you consume with your ears. Consume things that are spiritually high vibration, that feed you, that nourish you, that raise your spirit up, to help keep you. Things like joy and bliss are high vibration emotions. They're not low vibration emotions. So if you want to experience high vibration emotions, keep your vibration high. Watch what you eat with all your senses. Feel your feelings when they arise. That's something I don't love, and I've been reminded about a number of times, not to try to spiritually bypass those. Sometimes we just have to feel the feelings. Those two are divine. They're not bad. They are also of the divine. We're here to feel and experience and sense and see. And sometimes the only way through is to go through. So and then knowing that, be aware. Know that it's going to come, or it may come. So when you have those moments, you may not like it, but you're not surprised. You know that you are the observer. You know that the mind is doing what the mind does. and you can work your way through it with the help of these strategies. Lastly, self-love. There's another one that I spent a lot of time working on. But take time to acknowledge the courage that you yourself are showing by choosing a path that feels difficult. Knowing that it's going to lead you to freedom, knowing that you're human, knowing that sometimes you might slip up, knowing that you're going to feel feelings. Sometimes you might feel angry, and then we feel angry about feeling angry. We feel bad about feeling angry. Those emotions are going to come. And the path home is the path of love. We have to love ourselves, because if we're supposed to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, then we have to love ourselves before we can love anyone else. So gentleness with ourselves. I want to talk for just a minute about radiating, what radiating is. I have a website called Radiating from the Heart, and that became important to me because when I first started out in healing, I used to think I had to take on people's energy and digest it and let it go through me, and that was actually really unhealthy, and I would be drained at the end of sessions. But instead, we can radiate like Ida's smile radiates. I used that this morning, but when Ida smiles, you can feel it. When a lot of you smile, you can feel it. And conversely, when somebody who's a drag walks into the room, you can feel it. And that's why you can say, like, I like your vibe, or I don't like your vibe. We're talking about frequency. And when some of us were in the military, we rode around in vehicles that had what they call positive pressure displacement, where the vehicle was pressurized. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. If we got gassed or had chemicals dropped on us, the vehicle itself was pressurized with clean air so that a little air would leak out. It would kind of come out of the vehicle, but nothing got in. So if we're radiating and not sucking stuff in, then we can protect our vibration that way, and we can also change people around us. You hear about people getting stuck with cords. Light doesn't get stuck with cords. Bob's over there sitting in the light. When Bob gets up, the light's going to stay there, and Bob's going to move on. He's not stuck to the light. When we radiate, people come into our field. If we're radiating, we can interact with them, and when we walk away, we're not stuck with any cords of attachment. Which brings me to one last spiritual paradox. A lot of times we might feel upset about what's going on in the world around us. We might feel upset about current events, current administrations, current politicians, the climate, a lot of different things. And that can lead to a feeling of helplessness. Like, what can I do? I'm one person. I can't change this person, and this person. But there's another paradox that I call changing the outer world by changing the within. It's back to that self-love again. And we talk about something called changing the collective consciousness. Have you guys heard of the 100th monkey theory? The 100th monkey theory, very succinctly, was a study that was done on the islands off of Japan where these monkeys liked to eat sweet potatoes, but they did not like eating the dirt. So a lot of the adults would go hungry because they didn't want to eat dirt. And then one day, one of the young monkeys started washing the sweet potato in a stream, and then other monkeys followed the same behavior. As they observed this monkey do that, they watched him, and they learned how to do it, and slowly the change spread. And then one day, I don't know if it was 100 monkeys or 1,000, but one day, simultaneously, the entire island of monkeys started washing their sweet potatoes, whether or not they had seen the behavior. And even more interesting, in an island far away from there, off Japan, the instant that first island started washing its sweet potatoes, the entire second island also started washing sweet potatoes. So if instead of washing sweet potatoes, we loved ourselves, if enough of us did that, could there be 100 people effect, 100th conscious human effect? I want to just take us into a meditation right now. So if you want to go ahead and start getting comfortable in your seats, have your feet on the floor, back erect, slowing your breathing down, knowing that in this moment there is no place to be, nothing to do. Also knowing that we're in that time of year where maybe some New Year's resolutions have been broken, and there's the thought, well, there's always next year, and there's still 11 months to go in the year. And maybe we beat ourselves up because we haven't gone to the gym or we bought the membership, or we have not eaten the way we want to eat, or we've treated someone the way we didn't want to treat them. And we start to beat ourselves up for that. And we wish we could have done it different, and we want to wait another year to have a fresh start. But maybe consider that Paramahansa Yogananda said that every morning we wake up, we reincarnate into a new body, into a new way of being. Every minute, we reincarnate into a new way of being. Every breath, we reincarnate into a new way of being. There's always 365 and a quarter days from right now. What if every second was a new year? What if we loved ourselves enough to know that if we made what we would consider a mistake in the next breath, we had our whole lives ahead of us and we could begin anew? What if we even knew that there was no way to screw this up? That inside we are individual units of cosmic consciousness, created in light, created from a creator. There is no action we could take to ever tarnish that light. This little light of mine, it comes from a big light. It comes from spirit. It's what animates this body. It's what we will be when we leave this body. It's what we were before we came into this body. You are divine perfection. What if we loved ourselves that way? What if we loved the little child inside of us that just wanted to be held and to know that it was all right and it was doing the best that it could in that moment? And what if we knew that if we persisted, we would learn to master living through the heart and get to the place we wanted to get to? And for the next minute or so, I would just invite you to continue to breathe and sit in the silence and feel in your heart those feelings of love for yourself. With your breath, feel those expand for yourself. For yourself. I am, that I am, that I am, and you are. And when you're ready, slowly bringing your attention and your awareness back to the room, breathing more deeply, maybe wiggling your hands, fingers, and toes, knowing that at any time you can do this meditation, even 5 minutes of meditation to remind yourself of this can rapidly speed you on your progress to living through the heart. You know, the path of living through the heart is challenging, but it is the path to freedom. It may lead you to places, circumstances, or events that make no mental sense whatsoever. And it's not just me. I know many of you that are relating stories to me of the same things. Maybe buying a parcel of land that you're guided to buy that you don't know why. And maybe talking to someone or calling someone that you don't know that you want to call. Many great masters teach us to persevere and overcome. They say in Revelations, to those who overcome, even as I also overcame, I will make you a pillar in my Father's house, and you will go no more out. You can get off the wheel of karma. Dr. King said, you don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know the second law of thermodynamics. You don't need the mind, the knowledge, the book learning. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Will you join me in living through the heart? Unity of Dallas has so many resources to tap into here. So many people, so many classes, so many techniques to get into your heart. I'm offering sessions one-on-one this week. If you're interested, there's information out at the next desk. I'm excited to be here. I'm grateful to be here. I look forward to hearing your stories of living through the heart. Sat Nam, Namaste, bless you, thank you, I'll see you soon.